Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. It's your boy, Michael Patrick Buckley. Guys, today we have a special guest. This actually may be the best episode, ones that means the most to me. And this is the 53rd one, so we've done a lot of episodes, and I've had a lot of special guests on. But this one is extremely, it just means so much to me that I can spend some time with an amazing friend that I have, Fitz Robertson here. We are currently in Princeton, New Jersey, and we are actually in person. So this is the first in-person podcast that I have ever done and ever been able to do. And fortunately, with Fitz's technology skills, I'm able to do that. But guys, Fitz, he is the most down-to-earth, generous, nice kid I've ever met. Even though you're 26, I call you a kid still. I call everyone a kid. I'm not kidding. He's probably the smartest kid that I know. He has really transformed so many lives around me, including mine. And he's been an entrepreneur since maybe from the womb, I would assume. I mean, just came out as an entrepreneur. But from an early age, he was just determined to be a businessman. And he has really... he's met so many influential people around the world, and it is just so amazing to be here today with Fitzgerald sharing this message that he has to share. So Fitzgerald, welcome to the podcast, man. It's really great to have you.
MP.
And it's been a long time coming for this conversation, and I'm so blessed to be able to have it with you today.
Indeed. Well, MP, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here, and everything that you said about me, I feel the same way about you.
Thank you.
You have impacted so many people through just even before the podcast, just through the way you live your life and the example that you have served in many capacities. And so it's really awesome and exciting to be here, and I'm glad to host you here in Princeton, New Jersey.
Dude, it's such a beautiful small little town. Getting to go out in the city here was awesome last night. That was so cool. We went to a local bar and got drunk. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't drink. We actually didn't drink at all. We just we went to trivia night, and then we actually wanted to get ice cream. But
we wanted to go to the Bent Spoon.
Yeah, here in Princeton, but that was closed. So I went out and got some chocolate, and Fitz got some ice cream.
I got a Superman ice cream cone dipped in dark chocolate with sprinkles.
Love it. And then this morning we went to the Seminary and got to check that out. So super cool stuff. And now here we are doing this episode.
Indeed.
Cool. So Fitz, how's everything been, dude? How was your experience? So we are actually, why don't you just give us a little background? You know, where are you from?
Sure.
Where you went to school?
Indeed.
Hey, you know,
the one and only Seton Hill University.
Yeah, right. Let's start there. You know, just give us all a
Indeed.
little touch up of what's going on in Fitz's world.
Indeed. So I am from the greater New York City area.
Okay.
I grew up between Brooklyn and Westchester County, more specifically Pelham, and the Fort Greene area of Brooklyn. And I've had a tremendous opportunity to get to really understand any number of different life circumstances, from just going to a number of high schools to then going to Western Pennsylvania and going to school with you at Seton Hill University in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is a huge town that I'm sure everybody has heard of.
The whole world, right?
Yes. And as you know, I studied business undergrad. Minored business administration with concentrations in marketing, HR, and entrepreneurial studies with a minor in finance and a minor in sociology.
See, you see what I'm talking about, guys? I mean, this kid, he does it all. He does it all.
And
wait till we start talking about stocks.
Do we have time for that? I graduated 4 years ago with an undergrad degree in business admin, and just the last couple of years of my life has really guided me to really do some solid interrogation on my relationship with God, and really turn to the text and do a lot of really deep thinking about what does it mean to do this thing called living out my life in light of my faith. And so here we are at Princeton Theological Seminary, which is, I've just had a great experience. Tomorrow is my last day of Friday, which is in 2 days, is my last day of summer Hebrew.
Awesome.
And I have my final, and it's been going very, very well so far. And so we met at Seton Hill University.
Yeah, right.
We had some classes together with the one and only Dr. Junta.
Yeah, she's a tough one.
Indeed.
She's really a hard hitter, that's for sure.
Indeed. And we worked together in a number of entrepreneurial capacities, working on different projects together in school, and had a great time.
Yeah, no, I really gained an awesome experience with Fitz. We worked on a project called Grey Hemlock, a lot of fun, and you don't do anything like that today, correct?
No, not anymore.
That's okay. Matter of fact, would you be interested in sharing like some of your business ventures that you've been on, or even some of the stuff that you're currently doing, and maybe someone would love to reach out and work with you about some stuff.
Absolutely.
You never know who's going to listen, right?
Yeah. So my current company is called Lotus Strategy Lab.
Okay.
It's strategy consulting for underrepresented entrepreneurs. So I help them to start or grow businesses. And it's really, what I mean by underrepresented entrepreneurs is any group of people, somebody that belongs to a group of people that has had a tough time gaining access to information, resources, and networks to figure out the next steps for their business, whatever it is, whether that's just an idea stage or a business that's up and running and is looking to get to the next level and looking to do it, on a pretty tight budget, but still has big dreams and big aspirations. And so those are the kinds of clients that I'm very, very fortunate and very blessed to help out. And I have a blast doing it. It's lots of fun. Yeah, and I've gotten entrepreneurial experiences. My first entrepreneurial experience was in Pelham, in Westchester County, New York, was with a lemonade stand with my brother. And
no way.
Yeah.
Well, matter of fact, speaking of lemonade stands, I know you're a big sports guy, Fitz.
Of course, yes. I know all about the touchdowns.
Yeah, you can. So this past year in my fantasy football league, I actually got last place, and we decided on whoever got last place, they had to do a punishment.
Yeah.
And for this year's punishment, actually, I haven't done it yet, so I'm a bit behind on the 8 ball here. But I'm supposed to go in Oakland, right on like Pitt's campus for the most part, and sell lemonade to people. So and I'm supposed to have like a big sign like fantasy football loser. Yeah. This is my punishment kind of thing. Maybe you could teach me some selling skills.
I'll take you on as a client.
But so whenever that comes, it's definitely going to be a fun experience, and I am going to live up to that expectation, to that promise, because I was the loser, and I am well deserved for my punishment. So maybe one day we'll get there. Yeah. But anyways, so you were talking about the lemonade stand.
Yeah, so lots of different entrepreneurial experiences. My first real entrepreneurial endeavor was in high school when I started the Moment Studios. And you look over there on my fridge, you can see the magnet from the Moment Studios when I started that in 10th grade. Wow. And that camera that I've taken all around, I've been very fortunate, I've been able to take it to 14 different countries, was the beginning of the Moment Studios. And from there, I started dabbling in different fashion businesses and different service businesses. I started a consulting business when I was in 11th grade. And then when you met me, I started the fragrance company. Yeah. And then that moved into what was Grey Hemlock, which moved into what was called Pangea Exchange. And now I'm just doing the business consulting and school full time as well. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine you have your hands full.
Oh yeah.
And then now you have a dog too. Oh yeah. Right.
The best dog in the world.
Just add it on, right?
Indeed.
That's so cool though. Yeah. I mean, I'm really impressed with your ability to take on so many different jobs and roles and still be such an amazing friend and amazing family member, actually, in general. I'm really impressed with that. And I wish more people were like that, actually, and we're able to handle that. But it definitely takes a certain personality and takes a certain mindset and discipline to actually be able to do that. So I give you a lot of praise for that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I have the same thing to say about you. And I think that your ability to be present is incredible. If somebody can be present physically and not present mentally, emotionally, in the totality of whatever experience that they're in, and your presence is just wonderful, and it's just been awesome to, even though we've only shared 18 hours together. It's felt like
it's been
longer.
Guys, on the last episode that I did mention that I was traveling through New Jersey here into New York, staying with Fitz for a day, maybe like 20 hours, I guess you could say. And then heading up to Brooklyn/Manhattan to hang out with Jenna, and then going to Woodstock. But here we are. Matter of fact, Fitz, let's dive into this a little bit. So, where are we exactly?
So we are at Princeton Theological Seminary, and as I mentioned, just the last couple of years of my life, I've just been a lot of personal questions, and also through my life experiences, and like, what does it mean to do this thing called life in light of my faith?
Right.
And there's a lot of really, really interesting things that are happening in the world around us, whether it's with food, especially, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Yes, we're definitely going to get into some food stuff here.
Whether it's food, whether it's what's going on with climate and weather, whether it's what's going on with politics, no matter what angle of life. If we really do have this sense of faith and bringing it together, and that is how we feel that we should live out our lives, what does it mean when our faith intersects with food? What does it mean when our faith intersects with how we do community? What does it mean when our faith intersects with work? And I'm really, really, really excited to be here pursuing a Master of Divinity, especially focusing on the intersection of social entrepreneurship and faith.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to be here and study, especially under Reverend Dr. Kenda Dean.
Wow.
Yeah, she's done a lot of work on social entrepreneurship.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you've only taken one class, correct? In this program?
Yeah, I've only taken Hebrew so far.
Yeah, and then how long is the program?
It's a 3-year Master of Divinity, and the dual degree, which is the Master of Divinity, Master of Christian Education and Formation combo, is a 4-year. And that's what I wish to pursue. However, I'd have to formally apply for that next spring.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That seems like a lot. I mean, but it's, I already know that you're going to do so well and really enjoy your experience here.
Thank you.
Do you know any other classes that you're going to be taking?
Yeah. So I took to talk about Hebrew and how that's impacted me already, and then we can bring that into more practical elements like food and stuff. This is the Hebrew language, and the reason I wanted to dive into Hebrew first is because the Old Testament, the vast majority of it is written in Hebrew. And to be able to, and there's so much, debate and back and forth on, what exactly is the meaning of certain things in the Old Testament and how does it apply to how we live out our lives today. And I really wanted to be able to turn to the text in its original language and make meaning of it myself and be able to not necessarily find all of the answers, because as I continue down this journey, I find that a lot of times it's not necessarily about finding the answer, but it's about engaging in the conversation and the dialogue.
Yes.
And just having the ability to dive into the Old Testament in Hebrew just has provided so much additional color, and it's really, really been absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Diving back to the Leningrad Codex and looking at some of the Masoretic notes from the Masoretic rabbis that originally put these documents together and assembled them into one, and seeing what they had to say about some of the different types of literature that was being used. It has been a profound experience, and I would even go as far as to say it's been galvanizing for my faith.
Wow.
And it's also highlighted certain areas of my faith. For example, hospitality. Hospitality is something that's really, really important.
Yes.
It's something that, as we turn to the New Testament, Jesus talked an awful lot about. And how do we do this thing called hospitality?
I mean, you've done well so far with me here. And just in general, at all times, you've always been extremely hospitable to me. So thank you.
Well, hanging out with you was always a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just hospitality has been a huge element. But diving into the Hebrew Bible in the original language has been an absolutely beautiful and galvanizing experience for my faith as of so far.
Nice. So, a question struck my mind when you were talking there.
Sure.
So I went to a Catholic grade school growing up. Actually, I went to 2 grade schools, one from K to 7, and then I transferred over 8th grade to a different Catholic grade school. And then I went to Pittsburgh Central Catholic, where we had brothers in high school. And then I go to a school that has nuns that basically, they don't run the show, but nuns are a part of
the Sisters of Charity.
Yeah, right. So I've always been brought up in that realm, you could say. But I haven't necessarily dove in to the Old Testament, the New Testament in too much and too depth. Obviously, I took my religion classes, and I remember even taking a phenomenal class in in high school called Man of Faith with a brother Kevin, who has recently passed, actually, unfortunately. He had some health issues. But then I took, it is what it is. But then I took a class with Professor Gabrielli at Seton Hill. I forget what it was called. But, like, honestly, one of the best classes I've taken.
Was it the God's Not Dead class?
No. Oh, man, I forget. I think I probably still have the documents for all the class, and but we
can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. But it was a really great class, and I learned a lot. And I think with me, I'm a big guy where, like, if I don't use it, I pretty much lose it.
Sure.
You know, so a lot of the stuff that I've learned, you know, throughout the years here, even though it's been like a lot of information, like I don't remember too much of it. But so you mentioned that a lot of the conversations you have, there isn't necessarily like a final answer that you get out of it, but it's more about the conversation in itself. And with a lot of the stuff with like the New Testament, the Old Testament, would you say that it is pretty much black and white, or do you think that there are some gray areas in these forms of writing?
Sure. So
if that question makes sense.
Absolutely. So I'm going to answer your question directly, but first I want to preface it with something.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, especially when we think of any discipline, whether it's religion or nutrition or anything, a lot of times, especially in an American context, we can think of it as a very intellectual pursuit, right? And we think about it largely in terms of, you know, how can I study this more? What grad school can I go to this? What scholar can I read up on this? And while I bring that up to say that I think that when we're approaching our faith, while doing Bible study and exploring and understanding what, you know, generations and generations and generations of experts and scholars and pastors and priests have had to say about certain things, I think that the intellectual pursuit is important. However, the intellectual pursuit must come with the relational aspect of really thinking, pondering, praying, asking for guidance on how do I do this thing called life?
Right.
Hey, God, like, how do I think about these specific circumstances that I am in? And what are you calling me and asking me to do in this? And I think that having those two exist together is very, very, very important, and not just to dive into one at the expense of the other.
Right.
Or one way to think about it is the intellectual component of faith, and then on the other hand, the relational component of faith, and bringing them together. Now to directly answer your question, and just to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly, you were asking how much of the Old Testament and the New Testament is black and white, and how much of it is has more nuance.
Yeah, right.
Sure. So one of the things that first struck me about the Hebrew language, and I want to start by saying it's important that I humble myself. You know, I've been studying Hebrew for 8 weeks. Yeah. I'm a little short of it. Right. I'm a little short of a scholar. Right. Believe it or not.
Yeah, but you know what? Fitz is underestimating himself here. He is well versed on pretty much everything in this entire world. So you can ask Fitz, bring up any question from anywhere, and he will have a profound and meaningful answer. So
definitely not sports.
Okay. Maybe we can stay away from sports, but other than that, I mean, ask this man anything, and he will tell you how it is. That's for sure.
I doubt it. One of the things that first struck me upon diving into Hebrew is that the Hebrew language is very different than our approach to most of the Indo-European languages that we study traditionally in American schools. It's very different than, you know, let's say French or German or Spanish, in that there's a lot more definiteness when you're translating from English into, you know, German, or English into French, or English into even Greek. Oh, wow. As we'll talk about with the New Testament in a second. However, I've found, and I've chatted with a number of scholars about this in the last 2 months, there is a tremendous amount of art to the translation of the Hebrew language, especially since there are so many different beautiful types of literature and different functions of different forms of literature that are used within the Old Testament. For example, when we open a Bible and we read it in English now, we don't really have as much color on what is and what is not. What is not intended to be poetry, what is and what is not intended to be prose. However, all of that comes to light when you open the Biblica Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is which is a digitized version of the Leningrad Codex, which is the oldest compilation of Old Testament.
Wow.
And it just really has a lot of beauty and nuance to it, even within. For example, when you translate it into English, you lose some of the repetition, alliteration, and things that would be present within the Hebrew words.
Right, that makes sense.
So it's really beautiful, and it's really definitely got a lot of art and nuance to it. I have not taken Hebrew. I'm sorry, I have not taken Greek. The Bible is primarily Hebrew in the Old Testament, primarily Greek in the New Testament, and there's a little bit of Aramaic sprinkled in there as well in the Old Testament. And I have not taken Greek, but what I have heard from friends here, as well as some scholars, is that the Greek language is different from Hebrew, and that it's pretty easy to suss out exactly what the writer was trying to bring forth and to communicate. And the only other thing I want to add on that is context is so important. As we think about the Bible, it's important to remember that these collections of writings were written at different times for different audiences, and were meant to communicate different messages. And it's really important to think about that and make sure that that's in the forefront as you're translating and thinking about how this applies to everyday life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with that answer, Fitz. It's great. So let's kind of take a little 180 here.
Sure.
And step away from like the Bible and stuff and kind of go towards food a little bit.
Certainly.
I guess if you want to call that a 180 or a 360. Because this is Earthling Fitz on Faith and Food.
There we go.
So, Fitz, you've had an interesting experience with your food journey over the past several years, we could say.
Yeah, probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, and I mean, we all have these journeys. We're all trying different stuff out, eating this, eating that, even if you are just eating whatever. Now, you were vegan.
Indeed.
For how many years?
Before you. Long before you.
Yeah, while you were in school.
Yeah, well, I remember the days when I was in the cafeteria in the morning and you were like, dude, what are you eating? Eating like a rabbit. And now look at you.
Yeah, here's me eating like a rabbit, right?
How the tables have turned. Yeah, we just made 2 pineapples worth of juice.
Oh, it's delicious. And I'm actually currently sitting here drinking some orange juice now.
Yeah,
it's delicious.
Like many, many ounces of juice.
Hey, I love it. I think it tastes delicious. Yeah. And it makes my body feel great.
Yeah. But sorry to cut you off.
No, yeah. So you were vegan. When did you start that? Oof. Or when did you begin your that way of eating?
I started as vegetarian.
Okay.
I was vegetarian for about 6 months.
Okay.
And this was in junior year of college.
Okay.
And I remember the day like it was yesterday.
So that was 2017?
2016, 2017-ish.
Okay.
And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was drinking a glass of milk, vegetarian at the time. I was drinking a glass of milk in the cafeteria of our school. Seton Hill. And I was sitting across the table from Paige Kowalczyk.
I remember Paige.
Yeah. And
she was a marketing major, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. So. And as I'm sitting there sipping this cup of milk, and I was having a conversation with Paige about, why I'm a vegetarian, and I said to her something along the lines of, if you really think about it, dairy is more cruel than meat.
Yeah.
Because the animal suffering continues. And it was really profound saying that while simultaneously drinking milk. And that was the day. That was the day I transitioned into being vegan.
Wow.
And that went on for about 5 years, until about a year and a half ago.
Right, and we'll get into it a little bit. Now, it's not funny, but it's just like, it's kind of like, what the heck, because I even talked to friends, and they're like, oh, I feel so bad for the animals, while they're sitting there eating a chicken sandwich,
Sure.
And I feel like a lot of people are wary of what happens in the industries out there and what goes on, but they don't take into their own hands and actually make the decision to change their habits and change how they eat and change what they support. And that may even be the biggest thing, is what you support and where you get your food. So that was, like, I give you a lot of credit for actually being able to take on that decision, or take on that moment and make a decision, and pretty much ultimately change your life. And it really does take someone who's extremely highly conscientious. AJ, you would like that if you're listening, to make that decision. And I guess maybe there aren't that many people out there who are that conscientious of that, and they just basically kind of do whatever they want, and they eat whatever they want, and they don't really think about the decisions they're making. If they want Chick-fil-A, they go get Chick-fil-A. They don't care that the chickens are legit 1 inch from each other, tied up.
Well, I think about it in terms. I think it has many layers.
Yeah.
I think about it in terms of some of it is literally engineered intentionally by companies. For example, mass chicken companies with CAFOs have zero interest in you understanding what happens in those CAFOs.
Right.
And they will go to extreme lengths to make sure you have absolutely no idea. And, when you look at their, commercials on TV, it's just, it's very...
deceiving?
It's interesting, to say the least. And I think there's layers of privilege and power,
right,
and all kinds of overlapping things and diffusion of responsibility that come from just the way that life is is complex. And that's something I've also been coming to terms with more and more, that oftentimes, as I get older, oftentimes we're looking for yes or no answers to the questions, but more often than not, the answer is it's really complicated.
Yes.
And so I think there's a number of layers to it. And I think the closer people get to the actual food, the actual an understanding of what's happening, the more likely they are to make some kind of a difference.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I definitely, you mentioned there's a lot of context, and I think we can even take someone who is like low income.
Sure.
Like, how do you tell them, hey, eat the best, highest quality food that you could possibly get, when they can't afford pretty much what they're already putting on their table now? So
if we take that same example, we just did an experiment a few minutes ago where we took a conventional supermarket egg, and we took a properly pasture raised, like 108 square feet per chicken, actual outdoor pasture raised egg, and compared them side to side in terms of qualitatively. And I'm sure we'll throw some of the information on that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And when we think about privilege, I buy Vital Farms pasture raised eggs, and they're $8-9 a dozen, versus conventional eggs are $1.29 a dozen.
Yeah.
And so it really does become, there's any number of layers that go into it.
Right. I wonder if people think like, man, how do these eggs get here? There's thousands of, even like my favorite store is Costco.
Yeah.
And you got a Costco, they're just stacked up. It's like, I wonder if people even think about that. That just kind of crossed my mind. So anyways, you were vegetarian, and then you were vegan for, like you said, 5 years. And then recently you started adding in animal products back into your diet.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a common trend with a lot of people, or most people.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. People were like scared that like I'm gonna leave veganism, and start eating animal products. Even though if you guys are listening to this, I did release an episode giving reasons as to pretty much why I have no reason to not be vegan. So that was episode 50, I think. So if you want to go back and listen to that, you can check that out. But I like looking at all sides of it, looking at all angles of it, and really trying to get a deeper understanding as to why people are doing what they're doing. So Fitz, you were vegan, and then you recently started adding in animal products.
Yeah. You want to get into the why of all this?
Yeah, if you're comfortable, or
Absolutely.
if you want to share a little bit about that. Totally.
Absolutely. So a year before I graduated college, I noticed that my health started to take a significant downturn.
Yeah.
The first thing I noticed is I was always exhausted, like extremely exhausted, to the point that I actually started going to health services and saying, listen, you got to figure out what the hell's wrong with me.
Wow.
And long story short, I started having, problems with almost every major system in my body. And keep in mind, this is after I had lost well over 100 pounds.
Right.
And, had significantly improved, lifestyle, diet, everything across the board. And it was a period of 3.5, 4 years of just really challenging health conditions. And literally, I had been referred through the entire UPMC health system. They referred me to neurology, they referred me to cardiology, they referred me to they even referred me to plastic surgery at one point in time. I did not know that insurance covered plastic surgery.
Does it really?
But my insurance did cover.
You know what? I actually know a plastic surgeon in Pittsburgh. So.
Yeah. And it got to the point where I started to I was desperate, and I said, I need to figure out whatever is wrong with me. And so I was just trying, and all these visits, and nothing would come up. And I realized that what was wrong with me was far more holistic and not something necessarily medical.
Right.
I realized that the level of stress that I had in my life was gargantuan. I realized that my willingness, not necessarily willingness, but how I was dealing with that stress was inadequate, was not sufficiently setting boundaries in my own life. And also I changed up my diet. I am allergic to a lot of things, which makes being vegan.
Right. I mean, aren't you allergic to nuts and legumes?
And I'm allergic to nuts, soy, and some legumes, which makes it also my diet was very, very, very bland for a number of years. It was literally just beans and rice for lunch and dinner every single day, which gets old real fast.
Right.
And that's also another thing I'm sure you've touched on at some point in the podcast, just the life cycle of being vegan. When you, at some point in time, you find out about all the new products, the Beyond Burgers and the, seitan and all this stuff.
Right. And you want to try it, I'm sure.
You try it, and then, after a while you say, wait a second, what's the actual nutritional value of this stuff?
Yeah, right.
And then you start, wait a second, I'm eating 50 grams of just pure gluten every single day. Maybe I should not do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's like what a lot of people say too. Especially those who leave veganism, they're like, well, first off, you don't have to eat those foods. Like, those are not a requirement, or even a part. Like, you can, like, they don't even have to be part of your diet. Like, you can totally leave those out. But a lot of people, I don't want to say it's like an excuse, but they'll say, oh, well, like, if I'm going to eat this fake vegan meat product, I'd rather just eat the quote unquote real thing, you could say. Yeah. And that's like a bit of a reason as to why they would leave veganism and do that. Although the real thing, it's like, if you're going to McDonald's anyways, you're going to Burger King anyways, you might as well get the McPlant or get the Impossible Whopper, right? It's almost like...
I actually had a vegan burger in Germany at McDonald's before it came to the US.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Was it good?
I was allergic to it, and I found out the hard way.
Oh my gosh, Fitz. Guys, we got to get Fitz on Dr. Morse's plan. No, I'm just kidding. Dr. Morse, he's like this guy who promotes like...
Get rid of your allergies?
Yeah, with like fruit fast and stuff, and herbs and stuff.
I'm willing to at least hear somebody out, so we'll see.
Right.
Yeah, but going back to, why I was really, really, really making holistic changes to my life. And what I will say is, in conclusion, if I had to wrap up being not vegan anymore into one sentence. It's actually really interesting because it's like people think about it in two categories, vegan or non-vegan.
Right.
When people look at me as a non-vegan,
Yeah.
although my diet is really like very vegan still.
It's funny because I still see you as a vegan, even though you're not. Like I still do. I don't.
And I have. So what I do is sustainability and animal rights are very important to me, and so I actually looked up the amount of meat that it would be sustainably possible for every human on the planet to consume with all of the current. Just everything that's going on with soil and all that stuff. And I think it's like 350 grams I'll per week. I'll find that number and we'll put it in the show notes. I believe it's 0.6 pounds per week.
Wow.
And so I started there, and I started with doing meat with my lunch. And so I have like salmon or chicken primarily with my lunch. And then, on the weekend, I'll get a little bit more flexible in that I normally do have, a little bit of red meat in my Sunday sauce, which
I had yesterday.
Without meat.
Yeah, yes. And he did make it vegan just for me.
Yeah.
And it was delicious. It was, I mean, I could eat a huge plate. I could just keep eating it. I could just eat the sauce straight up. Well, I mean, I just love tomato sauce in general, so I could probably just drink it. Maybe I'll do Fitz's Sunday sauce fast one day and just chug your sauce.
Okay, yeah.
Make a bunch of it. Not even have any pasta. Just
yeah. But I transitioned away from a vegan diet just as part of a holistic transformation of my life.
Right.
And I have found that right now I am the happiest and the healthiest and the most fulfilled that I've been in my entire life. It is beautiful and profound and humbling.
That's awesome.
To say that and be able for that to be real. And I would also say that just it's a constant journey. It's a constant journey of exploration.
Well, I mean, what'd you just say to me? I guess you could say an hour ago. You were like, dude, I feel like I'm actually a 26-year-old kid now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm...
For a very long time, I did not feel like a 20-something kid should feel.
Yeah.
And for the first time in a very long time, I feel invincible, like a 26-year-old kid should feel. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing
Indeed.
that part of your journey with us and those experiences with us. And matter of fact, on our walk this morning, you mentioned like you don't like labels. And because I asked Fitz a question, I said, would you consider somebody a smoker even if they have like a cigar, once a month or once every 2 months? Like they barely smoke. Because he brought up something of drinking coffee. Actually, I brought it up, or we were talking about coffee, and I said, do you drink coffee? And he said, no, but I'll have like 2 coffees a year. And that sparked my mind of like, okay, so, you have 2 coffees a year. That wouldn't necessarily make you a coffee drinker, right? But like if someone asks you if you drink coffee, would you say yes or no to that question? And it's like, you probably say no. But then what if that person actually sees you drink coffee? They're like, what are you doing? They see you don't drink coffee, but you're drinking coffee. So does that make you a coffee drinker? So it's like for me, like I don't really want to drink alcohol. Like I would much rather stay away. And I don't drink too much, but like yes, I will have an occasional drink and drink here or there, whether it is once a month or once every 4, sometimes it's once every 4 months. Sometimes like maybe it happens twice in a month. But like, I still wouldn't consider myself a drinker. Now, the point of this though, is that Fitz brought up, like, he was like, I don't like putting labels on stuff. And I think that's what a lot of people do in all these different kind of communities, that they want to say like, oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm a raw vegan. Oh, I'm vegan. Oh, I'm a pescatarian, and I think like to a certain extent, it's good to do that, to like separate yourself, but at the same time, I do think it can be maybe even, I don't want to say like pretentious or
restrictive.
But it's definitely restrictive, but it's almost like some people do want to feel maybe superior. Oh, like I eat this way, like I'm kind of better than you. But yeah, so I do think like the whole stuff around labeling is very, it's just like, it's interesting. And matter of fact, even yesterday, we were going to get ice cream and we're trying to figure out like where to go. And the one place was closed. So you go to another place and they had legit nothing vegan there. And
we stormed out.
Yeah. Well, we did storm out. And
so this is ridiculous.
Right. And I've mentioned on the show before, matter of fact, in episode 50, where I said like, it would almost be like relieving to just like let go and just say, you know what, maybe if I like eat ice cream that's not vegan, you know, if I have it like once a year or whatever, that it's like for those special situations that it'd be okay. But then at the same time, I think like, is it worth it for that? You know, and is it worth even, like you could say if I will like break veganism, right? Yeah. So I usually, I don't do it. So I either don't eat it or I find a vegan option. Or you can just hope that you go to an ice cream place that has a vegan option. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so many questions that can be answered with that. And there's so many ways to look at it. And it just depends on who you are, what you're going through, and where you are in your life. So anyways, let's kind of get this conversation going into like,
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, for sure, please.
Just to summarize, because a lot of people say that animal rights and animal ethics are really important to them even after they transition away from the vegan diet.
Right.
And I definitely fall into that camp. I will say, and I think it's really important, I think it's far easier to be a vegan than to be a non-vegan and have your purchase decisions reflect your positions on animal ethics. What I mean by that is, for example, like Whole Foods is, that's, the go-to place for all of us, right? And
it's a little pricey around here.
Indeed. $1.29 for a lemon's a little rich. And even when you go there, the question around like, can you produce enough product according to the standards that are irrefutably good for the masses?
Yes.
And I've seen over the years, Whole Foods has had to cut corners.
Yeah.
In terms of their GAP food ranking, animal ranking system for their meats, you will never find, very, very rarely find step 4 or 5 poultry. And it's very, very...
What does that mean exactly?
That's like each step represents a better standard. So 5 is grass-fed, pasture-raised, the whole 9 yards. Right. And step 4.
5 feet instead of 1 feet now.
I think step 4 is pasture-raised, and step 1 is only slightly better than it is substantially better, but not to the standard that we would hope. Yeah. And so a lot of the product is still made and produced and harvested using practices that you and I might find totally disagreeable. And so I have found that as a person that has transitioned away from a vegan diet, it is incredibly difficult to find, even in this modern world, it is incredibly difficult to find product that is truly, truly, truly made according to the standards that I would like it to be. Right. I've gone as far as I used to buy from a company called Belcampo out of California, and it was extremely expensive. I'm having this stuff shipped on dry ice from California, and they had an expose that they were like getting their meat from Tasmania, and it was not actually grass-fed or pasture-raised. Oh my gosh. And it's just a lot of these disappointments, and it's really, 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 really challenging. And the closer you can get to the farmer, and the closer you can get to understanding it, the better. Which is why I'm excited that we got to go to the farmer night. Yeah, right. To actually see where some of the food comes from that actually gets shipped off or not shipped off, but delivered to local shops around here. Yeah. That's definitely really cool. But you wanted to move the conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was just to move it into to get to the deep root of this episode is faith and food. So how would you connect faith and food? I mean, I'm sure we could sit here for another hour or so talking about that, but I mean, just in short, simple terms, how would you best describe that?
Sure. So I think that It's really, really simple. I think that, especially as people of faith, one of the most recognizable books of the Bible, most recognizable passages is on Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, talking about creation, right? And we think about food, plant life, whether it's meat, non-meat, fish, anything. We have to include that in our definition of creation. And one thing that a mutual friend of ours, Emmanuel Joshua, said to me on a call where we were talking about the Bible a couple years back, is he said, Fitz, good stewardship is a fundamental biblical principle. And it's just as simple as that. We think about everything that we eat, everything that we call food, is part of creation, and being good stewards of that is so important to how we live out our faith. And I think it's just as simple as that, and really just getting to understand the entirety of the process of what goes into it, even before it's a seed in the ground.
Right.
Even when it's, just the soil. Like, what's going on in the soil? What's the soil microbiome like? What are we doing to nourish or deplete the conditions of the soil? And if we dive into it more deeply, then we get to think about all of the ways that food and faith intersect with other areas of life. For example, like carbon sequestration, when we're thinking about regenerative agriculture, that's something we can talk about with faith and food. Or just when we think about climate change, that's something we think about faith and food. We're talking about drought. We're talking about floods, for example. Here at Princeton Theological Seminary, we are very fortunate to have the Seminary, which is a large farm that the seminary purchased a number of years ago, and they grow any number of produce items, and they also have chickens for eggs as well as chickens for the dining hall. And MP and I went and took a peek there this morning. We played with some of the chickens and saw some of the tomatoes and kale and all kinds of, and beets. And
peppers.
Peppers.
Squash.
And calendula flowers and mushroom spores and all kinds of fun stuff. But when we really get down to thinking about the nitty-gritty of the intersection with all those things, and for example, last year there was a massive flood that came and wiped out all of the crop.
Oh my gosh.
All of it. All of the chickens died. All of the produce was just toast.
Wow, that's horrible.
And when we think about faith and food, we think about what's going on in our world and how can we be good stewards, not just to creation, but also to just the conditions and environment that we live within. Right. And I know that can sound a little heady and intellectual and all that stuff, but it's really, I think it's really, really, in its most basic sense, it can be really simple. Not to say that other layers don't play into it. For example, privilege and food access and food deserts, and all those things play into how we think about all those things. But on this most basic level, I think it's very simple. The intersection of faith and food. Right.
Now, could you say that, or would you yourself, and maybe even during your studies here, looking at the Bible and where it talks about, where we get our nourishment from, and then actually living that out, would that be considered faith and food too, for the most part?
Absolutely. And one thing that I have, I'm not sure if this is something that you've dove into. I was having a conversation with a fellow seminarian last week on what the ideal food conditions were in the Garden of Eden. I think you can build, and again, I'm no scholar on this yet. I have a lot of studies to do.
He's lying to you. He is.
I think you can build a solid case that Adam and Eve were vegan. I think you can build a really, really solid case that they were vegan. I don't know that there's any biblical support for Adam and Eve consuming meat. And regardless of how somebody makes meaning of Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, or even, all of Genesis, it really does, invite us into some really deep pondering about, what do we take from that? And so, it's really, really, really a lot to ponder and think about in that intersection.
Well, there you have it, folks. Adam and Eve were vegan. Because I think, I'll see people, they'll even quote from the Bible, and they'll say, I don't know exactly, but there'll be stuff like, God gave us the plants to nourish us or something. I don't know, but then someone else will say, oh, well, this also says that the animals are here to nourish us too. I don't know, like just it just depends on how you interpret the Bible, I guess. And then I think you can even look at the Catholic Church, and let's take in even like the Lenten period, for example, where they only do fish on Fridays. Well, not only, but you could say plants and fish. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, they did that because I guess for a period of time there, they wanted to make sure that they were supporting their local fishermen and that they were only eating and buying fish for that day. So they made those I guess I think it's 8 or 9 days in Lent or weeks in Lent. They made those 8 or 9 Fridays dedicated to those fishermen to make sure that they were being supported and that they were coming together as a community and feeding everyone. So I'm not sure if you know anything about that at all or if you have any thoughts on that, but there's definitely I'm sure there's plenty of passages and stuff that we can dive way deep into talking about that that says in the Bible or that we can interpret for how humans should be eating, you know?
The one thing I'll say on biblical interpretation is it's almost never good to take an isolated passage and have that and build an entire line of thought off of that. Right. One of the best ways it has been communicated to me on how to approach making meaning of any passage is this. Think about the verse in light of the chapter. Think about the chapter in light of that book of the Bible. And think of that book of the Bible in light of the broader context and message and overarching themes in the entirety of the Bible. It's really, really, really important, I find, to think through that critically. And I think sometimes it's depending on, what kind of literature you're reading in the Bible, what the audience was, what the time was, what's going on at the time. It's really, sometimes it can be difficult to suss out exactly what's going on and what that means for living in life today. And I would also restate what I said at the top of the podcast of it's very important to connect the intellectual pursuit with the relational pursuit, and don't have one in absence of the other. Take time, pray on it, seek guidance, and keep in mind that these answers often don't come, you don't pray before bed and you don't wake up with the answer instantaneously. Right.
That's great, Fitz. That's really great.
Yeah. And I think we can all think about in our own individual lives, because we all have the power to impact our world in very, very, very diverse ways. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to be here is people here, as you know, are studying, what I said to MP yesterday is, if you can think of any topic and how it intersects with faith, there's somebody here that's and
which is so cool.
It leaves me with a lot of excitement for the future of the faith world. Right. And I'm really, really excited to see my peers move out into their own congregations and their own nonprofits and their own whatever it is that they seek to do after seminary and really, really make a global impact. I'm really, really excited for that. And yeah,
something that I thought about here, especially in regards to faith and food, is I used to volunteer at a food bank, actually. And the guy who was there, who ran it, was a pastor of the local church there. And
is this Feeding the Spirit?
No, it's not. No. This is over in Garfield, actually. Okay.
Quick shout out, Feeding the Spirit at South Otterbein Church. Across
I used to do that.
Across from the Seton Hill
Art Center?
Dance and Visual Arts Center.
Yeah, right.
It's a great program on Thursday nights if you're in the Greensburg area and you have some time to help out and volunteer. Yeah. Also, another plug, Maranatha Outdoor Soup Kitchen, Fridays, downtown Pittsburgh on Boulevard of the Allies and Stanwix. Is a great organization. Help serve some people who are experiencing homelessness, 7 p.m. on Fridays. Reach out to me if you would like more details on either one.
Look at Fitz he's a big volunteer guy, a big give back to the community guy. So I appreciate you sharing that, Fitz. But yeah, like being at that food bank and seeing what was coming in and what was going out and how thankful these people that were getting the food, they weren't questioning what was in the food. They weren't questioning where it came from. They weren't questioning what the food even was. Whatever they got, they were happy that they got. And it really brings, it just really brings a lot of questions around your food and I guess how you should approach your food, because, we were talking about being able to afford what you can afford. And I think with situations like that, it makes me very thankful that I actually can purchase what I purchase and I can nourish myself with delicious plant foods that I make because I'm a beast cook. So I'm not as good as a cook as Fitz. But
we'll have to have a competition.
Well, Fitz is gonna. I'll be the head chef at Fitz's restaurant one day.
That's some slight foreshadowing.
Yeah, right.
Some slight foreshadowing. Save that for another episode.
Right. But, it just, a lot of that stuff, like, makes you question, not veganism, but just, like, how people eat. Like, a lot of people just have not a single, they don't even know what being vegan is. They don't even know what being vegetarian is. They just eat whatever they can eat. And you can almost imagine that most of the food, or not most, but a lot of the people in this country are doing that and are being fed that way. And I guess I would argue that a lot of that does come back to the government and what they support. Because, you go to a restaurant and the burger where the animal was killed in is less expensive than the plant-based burger. It's like, that's kind of crazy, right? You would think that the plant-based burger would be more affordable than the beef burger or whatever kind of burger it was. Sure. And
when we traveled, you saw that my vegan options were almost always more than the non-vegan options.
Right. Which it makes you think, like, how is that? Like, why is that happening? Yeah. That's not and it's just that there's just an overabundance of the killing and death of animals, you could say. Yeah. And that's why Fitz makes a great point that it's really important to actually go to the source and do your best that you can to go to your local farms and get produce from them and support them, especially if you are doing more animal products. But yeah, I just think that, like, the subsidies and the government, they play a huge role there. Whereas, like, if they were supporting more, even if they were supporting more, like, vegetables, I'm not saying, like, support Bill Gates and his Beyond Meat, experiment and stuff, but, like, I feel like
I am not well versed in whatever it is that you're talking
about. Neither am I. But I mean, you hear it all the time on social media where, like, there's a vegan agenda. What do you mean there's a vegan agenda when the vegan food costs way more than the dead animal food? So, sorry for stating it like that.
No.
But yeah, it just a lot. It just makes you think. Like, if you have the money, spend it on good food.
I think this intersects with a conversation that you and I were having last week over many back and forth audio messages and Instagram.
Yes. Yes.
I think that, as I think about food and faith and also just, going back to hospitality. Yeah. And I think that the more ways that we as a country can take and help people and whatever, and if you're listening to this, don't take help people as any certain form of help, in whatever form that looks like, that we can help people to not have to worry about basic needs, it explodes just the ability to think about, if you're worried about, how am I going to scrounge together the last $200 for rent?
Right.
You don't have time for the conversation about is this steak grass-fed and pasture-raised?
Right, exactly.
How far was the farm?
Right.
You don't have time for that conversation.
Right.
And so I think that the more we can do as a community of faith, and in communities, however we describe that, in our communities of faith, in our family units, amongst our friends, colleagues, peers, whatever, to just mutually help each other to not have to worry so much about basic needs. As we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just basic needs, and help people move towards self-actualization. And I think that in many ways, conversations around food and what we can choose, unfortunately, are a privilege that so many people don't have. And I think that we can do a better job in our communities of helping people
100%.
To be able to focus less. And I know a big reason for you on veganism is health.
Yeah. No doubt.
And I think that, and something that I've learned firsthand, is that health is not just determined by calories in, calories out.
Yes.
Health is also determined by stress.
Yes.
In lifestyle.
Yes.
Exposure to just literally like exposure to toxins, all kinds of things. And if we can help in our communities to reduce the burden, just the impact on stress and so on and so forth, and a lot of this conversation, unfortunately, is concentrated on, not the conversation, a lot of this issue is concentrated on those it affects in underrepresented communities.
Yes.
And if we could really help people to move out of those, just having to be in that state where you're having to focus on your basic needs, I think that we would have more room for people to have conversations like these.
100%.
That was a long-winded way of saying
No, that was perfect. And matter of fact, listening to your answer there is something that you've always said to me is that, MP, if you make over $50,000 a year, you make more than the average household income.
If you live in the United States and you make more than $50,000 a year,
Combined, right?
Congratulations, you are one of the 1% wealthiest people on the face of the planet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that
and that's not to say that people making $50,000 or more don't have problems and challenges and all those things.
Right.
Yeah. Just
I mean, with inflation nowadays, it's kind of like it's like even that's. I mean, I'm not gonna say like live within your means. You can do fine, but.
It could still be tough.
Yes, no doubt. But it was just very eye-opening to me of how actually desolate and poverty-driven this world actually is.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see.
Yeah.
But
and it's so sad, and this is piggybacking off the conversation that we had before. It's so sad that we are in the richest country. We are in the richest country that the planet has ever seen.
Right.
And 60% of people are living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Richest country on the face of the planet. And 60% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. And people are having to worry about food insecurity and all these things that, as a community, and the way I look at it is, as a community of faith, we can do more.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great, Fitz. I think this is a great place to wrap up. We have chapel here in a little bit. It's coming up. And then
we're headed to chapel. I don't know who's preaching, but we're headed to chapel in Gambrell Hall at Princeton Seminary in a few minutes.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. And my time will be wrapping up here in Princeton, even though on the way back, I think I'm going to stop here for another day or two, which I'm really excited about.
Awesome.
But Fitz, thank you so much for sharing this in-depth, intellectual conversation with me.
Absolutely.
And with everyone else who's listening.
Yes.
Are there any final thoughts that you would like to share about Earthling Fitz on faith and food.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, MP, thank you so much for having me here on the podcast. I've had so much fun. I've had so much fun having you here in Princeton, and I look forward to future conversations.
Yes.
And
we're gonna have them if you have time. If you have time.
Absolutely. Hey, we'll make it a Google Calendar invite. We'll make it happen.
Well, it's funny. It's because if you're not on the calendar, you may. I've learned that from Fitz actually. Like legit, you gotta have a schedule. You got to have a routine. You got to have stuff in place to make sure you get shit done, or else it's not going to happen. So
one of the most profound books that I've read is called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I'll put a link in the show notes. And one of the things he says is, if you do not prioritize your schedule...
Oh, I thought I was going to sneeze.
Yeah, that's what
I still may sneeze, but...
He said, if you do not prioritize your schedule, someone else will prioritize it for you.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah. But wrapping up, I do want to say thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I've had so much fun. And watching you and watching this journey that you've been on has been absolutely profound.
Awesome.
I have learned so much from you, and I'm very excited to continue this.
As I have from you, Fitz.
And if anyone would like to get a hold of me, Earthling Fitz on Instagram. Earthling Fitz on Twitter for my stock tips. That literally...
Wait, you're on Twitter too?
Yeah, I have like 7 followers though.
I'll follow you right now.
Let's make it 10.
I'll follow you on both of my accounts actually.
Okay, yeah.
How about that?
And if you're interested in chatting more about strategy consulting for a small business of yours or someone else's, feel free to shoot me an email. Fitz, F-I-T-Z, at lotusstrategylab.com. L-O-T-U-S, strategylab.com.
There you have it, baby. There you have it. Dude, you have 34 followers.
There we go.
And now you have 35 because I just followed you.
Yeah. And I heard that everybody that listens to the podcast is obligated to follow me on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, they are.
There we go.
He's a great follow. Definitely hit him up. Reach out to him.
Yeah, hit me in the DMs.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, Fitz, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Once again, this was a very special and meaningful, visceral episode for me. The first one that I've ever done in person. And I hope to do a lot more of these in the future. So I hope you guys learned a lot today from Fitz. He is a wealth of knowledge. He is an unbelievable human, one of my best friends, and I'm so thankful to be able to share this with you guys today. So without further ado, guys, stay up, be great. Always keep it HUNNIT.
Feel the same way. Thanks again, MP.
Of course. Thanks, Fitz.